Over the past day, Ukrainian defenders struck 14 areas where Russian military personnel were concentrated. Source: General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Facebook. Information is of 6 o'clock on the 6th of July. Details: over the past day, the Russian occupiers launched attacks with 5 Iranian-made Shahed attack UAVs. 2 of the kamikaze drones were destroyed by Ukrainian air defense units. The Russians also carried out 59 airstrikes and fired from multiple launch rocket systems at Ukrainian troops' positions and settlements 65 times. Russia is focusing its main efforts on the Lyman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Marinka fronts, where fierce battles are being fought. A total of 40 combat clashes occurred between Russian and Ukrainian forces on these fronts over the course of the day. Russia continues to maintain its forces on the Severshina and Slobozhenshina fronts. Russian forces carried out air attacks near Rybovsky in Sumy Oblast and Kharkiv and Platonivka in Kharkiv Oblast. They deployed mortars and artillery to fire on more than 35 civilian settlements, including Hersk, Oleksandrivka and Timonovichy, Chernihiv Oblast, Saradina Buda, Stukalivka, Basivka, Sumy Oblast, and Veterinar, Kazaka Lopan, Zelin and Hadish, Kharkiv Oblast. On the Kupiansk front, Russian forces attempted to advance toward Novoselivsky, Luhansk Oblast, but Ukraine's forces held the line and repelled all Russian assaults. Russian forces also launched air attacks on Ivanivka and Kyslivka in Kharkiv Oblast. They deployed mortars and artillery to fire on Petro-Ivanivka, Fyholivka, Monokainivka, Husinka, Novomlinsk and Kyslivka, Kharkiv Oblast. On the Lyman front, Russian forces attempted to conduct offensive operations and push Ukrainian forces out from the positions they held near Novohorivka, Luhansk Oblast. They failed. More than 10 civilian settlements came under Russian fire, including Nevsky and Bilohorivka, Luhansk Oblast, and Torsky, Verkhnyokamyansk and Rozdolivka, Donetsk Oblast. On the Bakhmut front, Ukraine's forces successfully repelled Russian assaults in the vicinity of Berkhivka and Bodanivka, Donetsk Oblast. Ukrainian forces also continued to conduct offensive operations to the south and the north of Bakhmut, and are consolidating the positions they have captured. Russian forces carried out air attacks near Bodanivka and Terezk. More than 10 civilian settlements came under Russian fire, including Vashukivka, Markov, Kromov, Oleksandro Shultin and Pivnikny, Donetsk Oblast. On the Avdiivka front, Ukraine's defense forces continued to hold back the Russian offensive in the vicinity of Avdiivka, Donetsk Oblast. Russian forces carried out air attacks near Avdiivka and Nevelsky. They also shelled over 15 civilian settlements, including Berdichi, Stepov, Avdiivka, Severn, Nevelsky and Pervomaysk, Donetsk Oblast. Ukraine's defense forces repelled all Russian assaults in the vicinity of the city of Marinka on the Marinka front. The Russians carried out an air attack near Krasnohorivka in Donetsk Oblast. They attacked more than 10 settlements, including Krasnohorivka, Hanivka, Marinka and Pobidat, Donetsk Oblast. On the Shatarsk front, Russian forces conducted an airstrike in the vicinity of Zolotaniva, Odradna, Makarivka and Rivnopil, Donetsk Oblast. They also attacked over 15 settlements, including Novomikhailivka, Vuhledar, Novokranka and Prekostivka, Donetsk Oblast, among other civilian settlements. Russian forces on the Zaporizhia and Kherson fronts are focusing their efforts on preventing the advance of Ukrainian forces. They carried out air attacks in the vicinity of Havrilivka, Novodorivka, Zenivka and Antonivka, Kherson Oblast. Russian forces attacked over 40 civilian settlements, including Lavadna, Olhaivsky, Malinivka, Huliaipol, Bilahiryat, Zaporizhia Oblast, and Tokarivka, Antonivka, Belatensk, Kizimys and Kherson Oblast. Meanwhile, Ukraine's defense forces continued to conduct an offensive on the Melitopol and Berdyansk fronts, reinforcing their recently captured positions, deploying artillery to strike Russian military targets, and engaging in counter-battery fire. Over the course of the day, Ukrainian aircraft carried out 13 airstrikes on areas where Russian military personnel were concentrated, and one more on a Russian anti-aircraft missile system. Units of Ukraine's rocket forces and artillery struck one cluster of Russian military personnel and equipment, 4 command posts, 1 ammunition storage point, 8 artillery systems at their firing positions, 2 air defense systems, 1 radar station and 4 electronic warfare stations. Over the course of Wednesday the 5th of July, Russian occupation forces conducted 48 airstrikes and deployed multiple launch rocket systems to carry out 54 attacks on Ukrainian troops' positions. Source: General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Facebook. Information is of 1800 on the 5th of July. Details: Russia continues to focus its main efforts on the Lyman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Marinka fronts. A total of around 30 combat engagements occurred between Russian and Ukrainian forces on these fronts over the course of the day. Russia continues to maintain its forces on the Severshina and Slobozhanshina fronts, where Russian forces deployed mortars and artillery to fire on more than 35 civilian settlements. On the Kupiansk front, Russian forces continued their attempts to advance in the vicinity of Novoselivsky, Luhansk Oblast. Ukrainian forces are holding the line and have repelled all Russian assaults. On the Lyman front, Russian forces conducted offensive operations in an attempt to push Ukrainian forces out from their positions in the vicinity of Novoihorivka, Luhansk Oblast but were unsuccessful. On the Bakhmut front, Ukraine's defense forces are continuing to conduct offensive operations to the south and north of Bakhmut and are consolidating the positions they have recently captured. On the Avdiivka front, Ukraine's defense forces are continuing to hold Russian forces back in the vicinity of the city of Avdiivka, Donetsk Oblast. They also repelled all Russian assaults in the vicinity of the city of Marinka on the Marinka front. Russian forces on the Zaporizhia and Kherson fronts are focusing their efforts on preventing the advance of Ukrainian forces and shelled over 40 civilian settlements. Ukraine's defense forces are continuing to conduct offensive operations on the Melitopol and Berdyansk fronts and are consolidating recently captured positions there. About 30 combat engagements recorded in 4 sectors of the front, General Staff. The Russian forces continue to focus their main efforts on the Lyman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka, and Marinka sectors of the front. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine said this in its evening update, Ukrinform reports. The enemy is focusing its main efforts on the Lyman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Marinka directions, with about 30 combat engagements recorded there throughout the day. The General Staff of Ukraine's Armed Forces reported on July 5 that Russia has lost 231,700 troops in Ukraine since the beginning of its full-scale invasion, with an estimated 670 casualties on July 4.